Hi guys, Jay here. Something a little bit different as we head into the Chinese Grand Prix this weekend. I wanted to talk about your F1 Fantasy squad, and what I mean by that is your entire squad that you can use to your advantage throughout the season. Your squad can be broken down into 3 different categories. Your starting lineup, which of course is your 5 drivers and 2 constructors. Their job is to score you points and help you build your budget, preferably early in the season. You've got your bench, which is your chips. You get to play each chip once throughout the season. Their job is to help you take advantage of a situation or help you get out of a bind. And finally, what I call the operations, which are tools and information that you can use to help you make your decision throughout every race weekend. So let's start with your starting lineup, which is obviously the most important part of your squad, because they're going to score you points and hopefully build you budget early on in the season. Ideally, at the start of the season, you want 2 Tier A or premium constructors and a Tier A/premium driver. The reason for this is the constructors are going to score the most points throughout the season. So for example, we can see here after Australia that McLaren have 71 points, followed by Mercedes, who have 67 points. So that's over 100 points easily. And then with your drivers, Lando Norris scoring the most with 59. The other reason you go for 2 premium constructors preferably is so that you can then use the rest of your budget after you've picked your premium driver to go for undervalued Tier B/budget drivers that you hope will increase in budget and score points along the way, so that eventually you can have a team that looks like this, where you've got 2 premium constructors, 2 premium drivers, and 3 Tier B/budget constructors, and if you're really lucky towards the end of the season, a top Tier B driver in the mix. Now ideally, you want to be settled with your team by the first or second sprint weekend. So in this case, we've got China this weekend, but more likely Miami round 6, because most people, or a lot of people I should say, did have a bit of a disastrous Australia. At the latest, you want to have a team settled by mid-season. So I would say in this case, round 13 at Spa, again, another sprint weekend. The reason why you want to try and have your team settled early is so that you can maximise on points moving forward. This is why building budget early in the season can be crucial. Talking of budget, when you can, try and improve your team. So if you've bought a asset that cost you, say, 7 million, and they're now worth 8.5, 9 million, you can cash in 2 million and go for a cheaper driver, let's say 5 million, and that will leave you with 4 million that you can then split across the rest of your team. When it comes to points and budget building, something I myself this weekend have been going back and forth with for this weekend is you could go for a budget building team on a sprint weekend. However, do bear in mind that sprint weekends come with more points, because you don't just get the points for the race and the qualifying, but you get points for the sprint race. Me personally, I'm weighing more towards points this weekend because it's a sprint weekend, and then budget building for Japan and Bahrain before we head to Miami. So let's talk about the bench, i.e. your chips. 6 chips that you can use once throughout the season each. You can only play 1 chip on a race weekend. So for example, you couldn't limitless and then final fix if one of your top drivers has a bad qualifying. Don't be too eager to use these chips straight away. unless you really feel you need to. And I'll tell you why. You can break these chips down into 3 different orders of importance / priority. The first one is your limitless chip. Limitless will give you an unlimited budget for that weekend. So you could have a team of the top 2 constructors and the 5 best drivers that are going to score you points. However, you must remember that whatever team you had last race weekend will be the team that grows your budget and will be the team that you revert back to after the weekend you use your limitless. So for example, if we take my current team 1, if I was to use limitless for China, the assets that would be growing my budget are Piastri, Albon, Ocon, Doohan, Hadjar, McLaren, Williams. And those are the assets that I will then start with for Japan before making any transfers. If you've got a strong budget building team, then limitless is a good choice, especially on a sprint weekend. Next, we can put 3 cards together: the wild card, the final fix, and the no negative. They can be used to get you out of a bind, especially on sprint weekends after quali or on a street circuit, such as Brazil or Monaco. The wild card will give you an unlimited amount of transfers within your current budget. So if you have a budget of 98 million, that is the amount of money you'll have with unlimited transfers. It's not the worst, but it's not great. However, if you've got a budget of 120 million because you've built budget and you use wildcard, you can then use that 120 million on as many transfers as you want for that race weekend. The final fix is one that you can use in different ways. You can use the final fix after a point scoring session. And what I mean by that is after the qualifying session or the sprint race, you can use final fix to make a transfer within your budget. This can be handy for different reasons. First of all, you keep the points of the driver you originally had in the previous session. But more importantly, you can utilize this for races where, for example, a top tier / premium asset takes a grid penalty in a good overtaking track. Or if a top tier A asset has a bad qualifying. A good example of this was Max Verstappen in Brazil last year. He started P17 and finished in first, and he scored 77 fantasy points. Which brings me to the no negative. The no negative means that you will not score any negative points for that race weekend, no matter what happens. This is especially useful for street circuits and when there's bad weather. Last year, 2 good examples of this is Monaco and Brazil. At the start of Monaco, there was a huge crash between the 2 HAASes and Sergio Perez and the Red Bull. And in Brazil, we had a couple of red flags throughout the different sessions. And then finally, 2 that I would highly recommend you hold on to till later in the season, which is your autopilot and your 3 times DRS. These can help you score big points, especially if you have 2 tier A / premium drivers. The autopilot will apply your DRS boost, your 2 times, to whoever scores you the most amount of points for that session, for that race, sorry. So for example, if you've got Piastri and Leclerc, and your DRS is on Piastri, but Leclerc scores more points than Piastri, Leclerc will then get the 2 times and double his points. With the 3 times DRS, it's even better, because you can still put your 2 times on one of your 2 top drivers, but then you can also put your 3 times on the other one, meaning one of your top drivers will score triple points and one of your drivers will score double points. This is why I highly recommend you hold on to those 2 chips until later in the season. For me personally, I'm looking at Brazil, Qatar, that late in the season. So let's talk about your operations, starting with F1 Fantasy Tools. You would have heard a lot of people talking about this. It is the best F1 Fantasy assist site that you can use. It's free to use. I'm going to show you how in a sec. But if you have a premium account, there are some perks. Mainly just in terms of using the system. This is the page you'll be using the most. It's the team calculator page. On the left here, we have the best teams with price change predictions and points predictions. These predictions are from simulations by a person called Rhter. And there's an entire page about Rhter on the F1 Fantasy Tools website if you want to know more about him. In the middle, you've got your teams, which I'm going to show you in a sec. And then you've got manual. So if you've got a free account, that's what you'll be using. Your maximum budget, i.e. your current budget. And then we've got the 3 times boost chip, the limitless chip, and the wildcard chip. And then down here, we have a section called simulation, where you can pick various simulations after certain sessions. At the moment, it says equal points per million. And underneath, Rhter sim coming soon. In other words, after FP1, Rhter will do his simulations. You'll be able to click on simulation FP1, and then this will change to the price predictions and point predictions going by FP1, as well as a lot of other technical things such as race pace, etc. Again, more information on that is on the page I showed you a minute ago talking about Rhter. On the right, we have the drivers with their expected price change and their expected points. And then we have the same for constructors at the bottom. If you are using a free account, you will have to enter your information in manually. And the way you do that is you click on manual. You would pick your constructors, your drivers, how much budget you have remaining, and how many transfers you've got left. You get 2 free transfers every weekend, but you can save one and carry it over to the next weekend, and then you'll have 3. Your team will show up here in the top left, and underneath will be all the best teams compared to your team. And then you can look to see who's going to lose and who's potentially going to lose and gain in value, and who's going to score the most points from top to bottom. Now, if you do have a premium account, you can link your teams to F1 Fantasy Tools. You will get prompted to join the F1 Fantasy Tools League in F1 Fantasy. Once you accept that, your teams will link, and you simply click on your team. So I'll click on Team 1, and then we can see I've got my Team 1 at the top, and then the best teams compared to my team. It also tells me my remaining budget, and if I have free transfers, I can even change to free transfers, or if I'm using the limitless, I can even change to limitless. I can also go force no transfer penalties. So if I don't want to take a 10-point hit, if I go down here, I can even select a chip if I'm going to use one. So for example, let's say I'm going to use the limitless chip this weekend. I click on limitless, and that gives me the best teams compared to my team. I click on the 3 times DRS, same thing. The other perk with having a premium account, and I will be honest, I don't use this page as often as I should, but you can see your transfer impact. So how your transfers have impacted you with your budget and your points scoring. Obviously, we've only had one round so far, so I can't show you more details than this at the moment. But if we scroll down, we've got points distributions, and you can see where you've scored points between the drivers and constructors, the race types, etc., and where you've got negative points, again, between the drivers and constructors, etc. You've got your positive effects, all these things that can show you what's going positively for you and what's going negatively for you throughout the season. So this is the Elite Data page. In the top left corner, you've got settings with two checkboxes, Global 500 and Patreon 500, i.e. premium members. The first one will give you results for the 500 highest overall scoring teams in F1 Fantasy. And the second one will give you the 500 highest scoring teams among F1 Fantasy Tools Patreons, i.e. premium members. On the left, we have constructor picks, and on the right, we have driver picks, and you can see we've got global, and if I scroll along, we've got Patreon. And on the right, we've got chip usage. So I'm just going to use the driver picks to show you how this works. The first column is picked percentage. So the amount of F1 Fantasy players by percentage that have picked a certain driver or a constructor if you're looking at constructors. You can then click on the ×2 picked percentage to see the top drivers that have been picked as a team's DRS boost, the 2 times. That's on the Global 500. And as I said, if you scroll along, you can do the same for the Patreon 500. Over on chip usage, again, we've got global and we've got Patreon. We can have a look to see the percentage of players that have picked a certain chip. So we can see here that in round 1 Australia, 97.6% used the ×3 DRS boost. Remember, that means they're not going to have it for the rest of the season. And if we scroll across to Patreon, we can see that the most used chip was the no negative, 2.3%. Finally, with F1 Fantasy Tools, we have the statistics page. So if I scroll down a little bit, you can see the amount of points on average, obviously we've only had one race so far, that each driver has scored throughout the season. We can also see when the sprint races will be. And if we scroll down some more, we have the constructors. The other thing you can do with this is you can look for certain statistics. For example, you can look at price changes. And then you can see which drivers and which constructors have grown or lost in value. Plus, there's a lot of other options that you can use. If you're a premium member, remember we said about your teams being linked to your account. You can even click on your team and you'll be able to see where your drivers and constructors stack up. So moving on from F1 Fantasy Tools, there are other places that you can get information and assistance, such as YouTube. There are plenty of F1 Fantasy content creators. I myself follow around 6 different F1 Fantasy content creators. Even the basic stuff, I still watch it. And I still learn stuff each time. Either stuff I've forgotten or stuff I wasn't aware of. So I highly recommend just going on YouTube, type in F1 Fantasy, and there'll be a ton of guides, team selection videos, chip strategies, etc. Now, I don't use Discord that much, but another good place to go is the F1 Fantasy Tools Discord. Here, you can gather information, you can share thoughts and opinions, you can talk with other F1 Fantasy players, It's a great source of information, opinions, thoughts, suggestions, etc. From what I've seen, everyone seems very friendly and helpful. And also, if I got my facts correctly, it was thanks to this Discord page that we got the leaked algorithm for this season's price change rule. All three of these sites are linked in the description below, so use them to your advantage. Now finally guys, a bit of a bonus. We come to you, the team principal. Your job is to use your entire squad to your advantage to the best of your abilities. You're not just a manager. You're a team manager, you're a team scout, and you're a team strategist. There's 24 rounds throughout the entire season. Your job is to plan and prioritize where you place and use all of the tools to your at your disposal to your advantage. Don't worry if you get it wrong, because eventually you'll get it right. It is a learning game, and you do need some luck. Who would have thought that Carlos Sainz would spin behind a safety car? Who would have thought that Fernando Alonso would crash in Australia? Don't just focus on your team side of things. Plan ahead. For me personally, I would say at the time of this recording, my strategy, I'm going to go into China looking for points. I'm then going to try and budget build for Japan and Bahrain. And then hopefully I'll have a good enough team budget building wise to play Limitless in Miami, to gain back some points, and then with my budget building team, possibly even use a wild card and build a better team. That's the plan and that's the theory. As always though, most importantly, try and have fun. I hope this video has helped you. It's been a learning experience for me. I'm going to have to take some time to cut out all the mishaps that I did during recording. I might be doing a team lock-in on Friday for China if I can get it out in time. So stay tuned for that. Otherwise, I'll talk to you next week when we talk about my team selection for Japan. Thanks for watching, guys. I appreciate it.